Welcome to ReConnect with Plant Wisdom. I'm your host, Tigrila Gardenia, nature-inspired mentor and leadership coach. In this podcast, I share ancient and modern knowledge from biology to spirituality about the wondrous ways in which plants can help you lead a naturally conscious life. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of ReConnect with Plant Wisdom. It's me, Tigrila. I am here. And this is one of those episodes that's I get asked a lot of questions, and I try to gather up these questions and share as much information as I can. But this one in particular is one of those questions that has been very hard for me to answer, because it is all around what changes in you thanks to this work or when you're working with plants. And of course, this is a extremely intimate question, something that sometimes is really hard to quantify, especially when you're working specifically with plants. You're trying to give a form to something that is formless or difficult to put into words. I mean, that's the whole point. The whole point of working with plants is that they have this alternative logic, this other way of interacting with the world that allows us to step outside of our humanness and re-enter our humanness from our plantness. So today I want to share with you three major identity shifts, like things that have fundamentally changed who I am, in my opinion, for the better, but I let you be the judge of that. So this episode, which is episode 49, is three major identity shifts that have happened thanks to the plants. And I'm a little nervous of sharing some of these because, again, not all of them are easy to put into words, and they are part of a long-term process. If you remember in a previous episode when I spoke to you about why I shifted from working on projects to working with people, like more on mentorship and coaching, and in the naturally conscious community, having that space for us to have these discussions, because I recognize that no matter how many courses I was taking, no matter how many experiences I was trying to have, none of this was a quick fix. This is all about evolution. This is why you'll hear that I don't really use the word transformation very often, or even change as much. I talk more about shifts, and more than anything, my favorite word is evolution, because we are in a constant state of evolution. And I feel like when we move into this conscious evolution, the fact that I'm guiding the evolution is when I feel extremely empowered to be who I truly am. So these three major identity shifts, things that really changed in the core of who I am, are things that I was only able to see. Yes, I kind of knew I was working on them. Not all of them, to be honest, and you'll see why in a minute. But I really could only see them with hindsight. So bear with me, and hopefully we're going to take a nice little journey through my past. But I hope that this will be also stuff that you can identify with, that you can understand, because I think we're all striving to be better versions of ourselves, right? Yes, in addition to all of the goals that we might have of, like, financial stability or changing, some aspect of your life, I think fundamentally every day we wake up and ask ourselves how we can be a better version of ourselves, how we can move that needle forward, how we can get closer to that life purpose, how we can live in more harmony, or whatever words feel super comfortable for you. Peace for so many people. I hear so many people lately with anxiety. And so finding that calm, that peace, that centeredness. And these types of identity shifts that I want to share with you really do go to that. They go to things that changed in me that happened over time. So from looking at it right now, it looks like a change from the past to the present. But in reality, it was an evolution. It was just like slow movements until I could sit here where I am today and look back and share with you these things. So let's start. Let's start with the first one. And the first one is a word. Okay, so actually, before I start, let me give you a background of one piece that might be interesting, because it's going to come in various places. So many, many years ago, in one of the first mystery schools I was initiated into, one of the pieces, one of the kind of pieces of work, I don't know, processes, that's the word I'm looking for. One of the processes that we used was to understand what were our four main, you could say, desires, in the sense that human beings have four things, all human beings have of these four fundamental things that we all do. And therefore, to keep that in check, we could have four things that we really want, or four things that are sort of, I don't want to say biological only, because they're also spiritual things that happen. Like, we take things in, such as breath or information or anything. We get things out of us by excrement, or by using that information. So we have this constant, I take things in: breath, air, water, knowledge, and all this. And then I have an output that always happens, which is biological functions, as well as intellectual functions, spiritual, emotional functions. These are two examples of things that all humans, all humans do. And so, for is part of this process, it was about going and identifying the four sort of desires or wants that you have in your life that you want to have. And my four wants at that time were trust, wisdom, acceptance, and balance. These were the four things I was striving for. I should have actually made these four major identity shifts, because actually all of those shifted. But one of them is still a work in progress on a certain level. So, and I'll get to that in a minute. So these were my four that I really wanted, so much so that I have a pair of beautiful boots, handmade, custom made boots just for me. And inside of the soles, between the outside sole and the inside sole, is a piece of paper that I wrote out that had those four desires. I mean, that was really how far I went to plant the seed of that, so that every time I walked with those boots, which I wore them for years, I still wear them now and then, I actually would remember these four things. So, trust, acceptance, wisdom, balance. Okay, four of them. So let's go to the first one, because this was something that I only recognized recently that had completely shifted inside of me. And it made so much sense to why I am in a completely different space and I am a completely different person. And it's something that I take a lot of my clients through. And it is acceptance. More, more than acceptance, it is radical honesty with myself. Now, you've heard me say this time and time again. I was a relatively negative person, in the sense that I see things through their criticalness. And I struggled for years to switch to being somebody that was positive. I thought that the answer was that negative side of me was bad, and I had kind of labeled it as such. And I've told you various stories across my podcast of different things that I had tried to do or I had worked on in order to get to this place of radical honesty and of acceptance. And especially around the idea that I was this negative person and I was trying to cut that out so that I could accept myself. You also know that I have body dysmorphia. I have a blog post about that. And I also have a video interview that you can find on my website, that I was interviewed for a podcast episode called Self-Love Ignited, that was all around that. And so acceptance was a really big part of myself. Like, I did not accept who I was. I thought I had to cut out a bunch of parts. There was a bunch of things about me that were wrong and a bunch of problems that were have. And it wasn't until I started working deep, of all the things that I've done, and I had worked on limiting beliefs, I had worked on, all the traditional things. If you can think of some mechanism, some process, some idea of how to work on this problem, trust me, I tried it over the years. Mantras and, crystals and all kinds of different things. And I'm not saying that those didn't work. They actually did work in their own way. They were working on various levels, but I actually had the problem all wrong. My problem was not that I needed to eliminate things. My problem was I needed to be much more honest with who I am. And I had to work on accepting that those parts of me are necessary in order for me to achieve my life purpose, in order for me to be the person that I am supposed to be. And that really only came when I started to work deeply with plants, when I started to understand plants as individuals, but more than anything, as part of an interrelated system, as part of an ecosystem, as part of a whole. The fact that plants simultaneously are individuals as well as wholes, like as well as a collective, they are both, can live this life really in a state of these two states so seamlessly. And understanding, when I started to learn about ecosystem services and I started to go deeper into what is it that plants are capable of and how do plants make decisions and all these different aspects, I started seeing mirrors between how plants process information, how plants act and react with myself. And I started to see that all of these parts of myself, that if I was talking as a human and I sat down and I listed them, I would create a category, like I would create a piece of paper and I would cut it down the middle and I would say, these are my positive traits and these are my negative traits. Have you ever been in an interview where they ask you, like, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? This is that example. That's another one. Hogwash. Because my strengths and my weaknesses are not based on my individual characteristics. I used to use things like, again, my strength was my assertiveness, or the fact that I'm determined on something when I get. But that's also can be a weakness. Every single strength that I have could be a weakness, because it's about when I use it, how much of it I use, and when, how much, and how it gets used. It's all about the dosage in a lot of ways. So therefore, I started to see this because as a human being, I would make this strengths and weaknesses, right? Positive aspects of myself, negative aspects of myself, things that I should keep, things that I should eliminate. Can you empathize with that? Because I'm sure that all of you have gone through this. Instead, when I looked at it from a plant's perspective, that doesn't make any sense at all. Plants don't do that. They don't say, oh, this trait over here, I'm just going to get rid of. No, they're like, okay, in this circumstance, if it's cold or rainy or I'm under attack, use this. If instead it's hot and it's sunny and it's this, use that. And the same trait can be used in different ways based on what's happening. So the plants really helped me understand that there is no such thing as a negative trait. There is no such thing as something that's good and something that's bad inside of me. My acceptance is the fact that this is how I was made. If I imagined myself as sessile, like a plant is, then I have to accept every part of myself and I have to learn, I have to master the use of that part of me. And this for me was like mind blown, really mind blown. I don't have to eliminate anything. I don't have to think of anything about myself as bad. Even the worst of my thoughts that come into my head, I want to bring them outside of myself, look at them and be like, where is this coming from? And how can I use this? Where can it be useful? And when I switch the question into something different, the whole world changes. And this is what I take a lot of my clients through. I had a client who told me once that I think I almost cried. I know, I think I did cry. I was so touched and honored that she saw me as this. And she said, I feel like you are the kind of person that, as a coach and as a mentor, but even as a friend, I can say anything to, whatever I'm thinking, and you will help me see the positive and how to use that. That doesn't mean we don't go into shadow work. We don't see negative, but negative is not bad. Negative is one side of the coin and how you use, but everything is useful. And so getting to that place of acceptance completely makes me feel like in any situation I'm in, again, if I think of myself always as rooted and sessile, even if I'm in a hostile environment, like hostile work environment, or in a situation with somebody, I always look at it as, what can I use from this? And what direction do I want to grow from this, right? I could grow away from it. I could grow toward it. I could stay and I could, get rid of all of my leaves and just become my roots and wait until it passes. I can make any decision I want to make. I have all the characteristics to use and I can pull from them, but I have to be honest with myself about what I'm experiencing in order to get there. So this was a really big shift for me. Acceptance, AKA radical honesty with myself. And this is one of the hallmarks of my coaching style, of my mentorship style. It's really being, I don't want you to ever have to hide anything, not just from me, but from yourself. I want you to feel like you can say it, be it, experience it, and then let's put it to use towards what you want to accomplish. So that's number one. But before we go on to the next point, I want to share with you one of our eco-conscious business partners. From earth to pocket, a smartphone's journey is filled with unfair practices, which is why I was so happy to have found Fairphone. Because today, in this modern world, you can't live without your phone. So if you're going to have a phone in your pocket, you might as well make sure it is the number one most ecological phone you could have there. It's no secret that Fairphone is out to change the world. Fairphone puts people and planet first. They care about human rights and worker well-being. They care about climate and the planet's delicate ecosystem. And they care about designing a longer lasting product so that rather than having to change it constantly, you can actually upgrade it easily and simply. They're a B certified company. They have a platinum medal in EcoVadis, which is all about the way that they run the company, and an iFixit 10 out of 10 score. In other words, it is super easy for you to open this up and just change a piece rather than having to throw it out and get something new. Plus, they have a fair trade gold integrated standard. So if you're looking for a new phone, I want to help you get a discount on a Fairphone. So click the link in the show notes and get 25 euros off, or the equivalent of your currency, and get yourself a Fairphone. The quality is bar none. The camera is amazing. And seriously, you are going to be so proud to share this with your friends and family. Okay, so let me give you number two, because of course I'm taking forever to go through these, but I just get so emotional about it. Number two is not balance, but flow. Remember, I had said my 4 traits that I wanted to accomplish. 1 is acceptance. 2 was balance. Now, I thought of the world in the sense of balance because I am such an emotional person. I totally lead with my emotions. I'm also very logical. So it's this weird thing. That's why I was an engineer as well as a musician. That's why the arts to me always balances science. So I thought of things as in balance, right? My goal, I always use the word balance, and I kept thinking about them as equal parts. And so I always want to bring things to being equal parts. But that's actually not how nature works. Nature doesn't balance because balance is, nature balances sometimes, but balance is just one state. Balance is stable. It has all these things. And that's the reason why I thought I wanted to go there. Being such an emotional person, I thought that I needed to find that stability. But stability is also limiting because you don't grow in stability. So what I discovered, and I think my first, few episodes of this podcast talk about this, about, creating with stability, but also being stable in creation. And so what I realized is that I don't want to be balanced. I want to flow. I want to be able to take in a given situation, and I want to be able to use, even taking things out of balance at times, what is best useful, what is most useful for that situation, and then bring it back. So I want to actually constantly be in a state of destabilization and then stabilization. unbalanced to then balance, and then from balance to unbalance. And this really happens depending on where I am in a cycle, right? If I'm learning something completely new, I don't want to be balanced. I want to be completely unbalanced because I want to be able to take all of that in and explore and experiment and everything. Once I have a picture of it, I want to balance it. I want to stabilize it. I want to bring it into myself and I want to integrate it. And then once that's integrated and I've reached a new stasis point, then I need to see, do I want to use this for a while in the state that it's in? Or do I want to destabilize it again, unbalance it again in order to learn something new from there? You understand what I'm saying? Really finding your flow is about being in tune with your natural rhythms. It's about understanding where you are at any level. So I can look at this property in my personal life. I can look at it in something that I'm building or I'm creating or something that I'm learning. I can look at it in sense of where I am with the seasons. Where is my natural cycle where I take things and I flow with them in whatever direction I'm supposed to flow. And so balance is one part of the flow process, right? But it is not the end all, be all of everything. It was not the goal that I thought that it should be. So in this particular case, one of my four words got 86'd out, like I cut it out, and I realized that I was trying to accomplish the wrong thing. And for a personality like mine, who's a multi-potentialite, multi-passionate, so many different ideas, balance is boring. So balance is good as a step in the process. But if I stay in balance too long, then I get bored and I start being disruptive and destructive to what it is that I'm trying to accomplish. If instead I think of myself as constantly looking for the flow, then I could work with my natural body's rhythms to see, when am I supposed to be moving and when am I supposed to be still? When is what I am working with supposed to be equal weight? When instead is it actually better for me to give more weight to something and not anything else? And this is an extremely important aspect for me when I was working with teams and when I work with team dynamics, like when I'm doing facilitation or I come in to work with a group for something. The similar is the acceptance, where I am radically honest with myself of what I'm feeling with the group dynamic, and what then asking myself, this part that seems to be coming out, this personality or this characteristic of myself that is coming out, or this trait that I want to use, what is it? How can it be best applied to the group? How can it be most useful? It's the same thing with the balance. When I'm working with groups, I look at the group and it's not about giving an equal voice to every person. It's not about equality. It's about equity. It's about really looking at each member of the group and seeing what are the functions that need to be given a little bit more of a spotlight in this moment, knowing that I'm going to give a spotlight to the others. This isn't about permanently putting them in those places. And that's where inequality really comes through. Inequality is when you permanently put things into positions where one is completely out of balance with the other. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about flowing. I'm talking about moving things into balance and out of balance. I'm talking about giving weight to something because in that moment it's most useful to you, and then taking that and then changing and shifting the weight in another moment. And it wasn't until I started to look at ecosystem services and ecotones, the space between ecosystems where there's a greater amount of volatility, and where I started to look at how I was going to be building my own ecosystems and what was my role as a person who is an ecosystem, because I myself also am made up of personalities and emotions and talents and all these things, which are all part of my personal ecosystem. But I also then interact with various ecosystems around me. And how do I flow in and out of that? And if it wasn't for the plants, I would have never understood this concept. I mean, really, plants helped me as I walked through forest, as I learned biomimicry principles, as I got into the idea of ecosystem services. I really started to understand, again, the reflections. As you know, I live in community, and the whole reason that I love living in community is because I'm constantly being challenged to see myself through the eyes of others and to see aspects of myself in the actions of others. When I started working with plants, that whole realm exploded because now I didn't just have human mirrors to help me on my path. I now have plant mirrors and all other types of organisms, true, because when I'm looking at an ecosystem, obviously I'm not just looking at the plants. I'm looking at water and I'm looking at microbes and I'm looking at animals and I'm looking at so many other aspects. So, really, this natural understanding that everything in nature flows through seasons, it flows through space, it flows through time. That helped me recognize that I was a being that should always be in flow. The last one is a bit of a big one. So bear with me for a second because I want to kind of narrow it down as to what this really changed from those four. Remember, I said it was wisdom, trust, acceptance, and balance. And the last one really was about that trust to a certain extent, right? The wisdom is wisdom, right? Wisdom for me is about, I guess really this touches both wisdom and trust in different ways. But trusting myself meant being in the moment. And honestly, I didn't live in the moment. I used to live in the distant past. So through my nostalgia and my memories and thinking about what things had happened, and I would very often live in the future. What could happen? Where did I want to become? I very rarely lived in who I was today and now. And the reason for that was because, as you know, I was looking at myself as a negative person who hated her body, who had all kinds of other situations, who just couldn't seem to put pieces together. But walking through the Sacred Woods Temple once at Damanhur, I was walking through the temple. I have a tendency to very much meander when I go through in sacred spaces like that, in forests of all sorts. I don't really do the hiking and walking fast. I just meander through it. And I often sit and I just look around and take it in. My favorite thing in the world to do on snow, on grass, on dirt, on whatever, is to just lie down in a dense forested area or any kind of woodland area at all, or underneath a tree and look up at the canopy and just let myself kind of melt into a sort of vegetality, to just allow the self to dissolve and to step deeper into who I truly am. And when I did this once in the Sacred Woods Temple, I, in that state of, as corny as it might sound, corny I think is becoming my new 2024 word, because so many things that I've reached are like the stereotypical things that we look for, like they're the archetypes that we're looking for. And I was like, no, I don't need to get there. Yeah, I did. So really melting into that oneness, I realized that I was fully in that moment. In that moment, I was present. I wasn't thinking about the past and I wasn't thinking about the future. I was just living in where I am today, in the moment. And this was, I still today can't really put the words into it, only to say that it was the most peaceful feeling I've ever had. And it is a piece of me that it's a piece that I carry with me now, always, at one level. Yes, I can get anxious. Yes, I could live in the future of who I'm becoming, but there's a sense. I was just journaling about that this morning. There's a sense of peace, even when I'm planning for the future. There's a sense of peace of where I am today, even when really hard, difficult things happen. There is a peace of what is happening to me in this particular moment. And I don't know how to put this into words other than to say that it is a peacefulness that comes probably as a result in some ways from that acceptance and that flow of whatever is coming my way. It's going to come anyway. So just enjoy where you are right now. Just really live in this moment. Find that acceptance with who you are, with what is happening to you, with looking at it from the perspective of evolutive growth, of where I can, why. It's not even a where or a why. It's more like this is. And therefore, all I can do is take it in and be with it. Just be with it. And this is probably the third most and most important shift that has happened to me. I today live in the moment. I love the moment. I still think about the past and I still dream about the future, but I don't live in those spaces. I live right here, right now, in whatever it is that I'm doing. And that is precious to me. Like that is what has completely yeah, that is living. To me, that is living. I still struggle with putting it into words, so I hope that you can feel what I'm saying to you. That's the best I can do. I just hope that you can feel it. But know that that is probably, if I was to say where one of the most important places that, I want to take my clients, or that I help my clients reach, besides all of these other pieces, in addition to all these pieces, the acceptance, the flowing, the whatever it is that they want to get to, but the idea that you live here and now, you live in the today. And yeah, and that's where the peace comes from. The peace comes from knowing that I can deal with whatever comes my way, whatever that might be. And I have thought about, because of situations around me, I have had to deal with some pretty major things. But there's a peace that right here, right now, this is where I'm supposed to be. And this is what's supposed to be happening to me. And all I can do is go through it. I can't avoid it, because if I'm a plant and I'm sessile, I can't run away from it. I can't pretend that it's not happening. All I can do is just be in it. I can be. And so that's it. That's the major shift. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these. I mean, are these things that you've experienced yourself? As always, these are conversations we're constantly having in the Naturally Conscious community. So I welcome you to come in and share your experiences, share what it is that the plants are teaching you today. And if you feel like any of these is where you want to be with your life, and I can help you get there, please reach out. I can't emphasize enough that this to me is purpose. This is life. And I am here for you no matter what is happening, no matter what you're feeling in this moment. If you're ready to take that step, to go one step further, to be the person you really want to be, then I want to help you get there. All right, that's it for me now. This is Tigria Gardenia. See ya. Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of ReConnect with Plant Wisdom. Intro and outro music by Steve Shuley and Poinsettia from The Singing Life of Plants. So join me, Tigria Gardenia, and my plant collaborators next time on ReConnect with Plant Wisdom.